Tell me a story. Something we've all said or heard in our lives. Stories bring us together around the campfire. Storytelling has earned its place as the most important tradition humans possess. The most important reason for this being that every story contains a lesson. Lessons to love, to forgive, to be just, and to strive for better than we have. They empower us, they lead us, they comfort us. Born in Alberta, raised in the backcountry, fishing, hunting, nature, the wild, all run thick in my blood. Growing up a Canadian boy, I had a similar dream to most other boys my age here, to make the NHL. When that dream was yanked from beneath my feet, how could I carry on? My story is full of hope, inspiration, joy, heartbreak, heartache, and resiliency. My name is Dana Lattery. I'm a fly fishing guide in southern Alberta, an ex-professional hockey player, and a storyteller at heart. Having spent the past decade guiding thousands of fly fishermen from all over the world, I've heard so many stories that paralleled mine. Stories of pain, brokenness, tragedy, from all different walks of life. The more time I spend with them, the more I realize that we all shared one common thread. Fly fishing saved our lives. Grab your favorite drink and join me on this journey as our story begins. And just like a fine wine, this podcast keeps getting better with age, because we do it once every 2 years. But I guess we're back, and you wouldn't know that if you were listening to these in sequential order. But this is Fly Fishing Saves Lives, and I am your host, Dana Lattery, as you might have heard in the intro if you didn't skip over it. And today on our show, or tonight, or whenever you're watching or you just be listening, there's nothing to watch. So we have a special guest, and Mr. Hepworth, why don't you introduce yourself softly, and then I will dig into a little bit more about who you are, and we will find out how you answer the question, how did fly fishing save your life? So let everybody know kind of who you are, and we'll go from there.
All right. Well, my name is Tim Hepworth. I am a local Alberta boy, kind of born and raised, born in Three Hills, and I've been in kind of central Alberta ever since. Yeah, I'm a middle-aged man who...
middle-aged.
It's weird to say that, but yeah.
What is middle-aged?
Well, I guess it depends how long you live. Maybe I'm younger than middle-aged, but...
At the time of recording, you are what, 36, 37?
Yeah, 36, yeah.
Yeah.
Just a young pup, I guess. But
you consider yourself a local central Albertan. That's it? That's how you define yourself?
Well, no, I'm a passionate fly fisherman and outdoorsman. Yeah, hunting, fishing definitely take up a big portion of my life, and I guide in the fly fishing department, so I spend my summers doing that, and sometime near the end of that season, I get to transition and doing a little bit of hunting for myself and that kind of thing. But yeah, I was very much raised in the outdoors. Grew up in a very large family, and that was a huge priority for them. And for us, so we spent most of our free time out in the bush or on a creek or river somewhere.
Nice. And so you kind of grew up fishing and then transitioned into fly fishing. Talk about your families. I'm trying to ask questions, but I already know so many of these answers. As you know, we're quite good friends and spend a lot of time together. But yeah, just trying to open up the book of Tim Hepworth, and so yeah, talk about kind of your growing up and the rather large family that you came from.
Yeah, so I am the youngest of 9 kids. Apparently, my parents didn't believe in birth control, so they just kept mounting up more and more children, and I ended up being the last one. And like I said, I was born in Three Hills. Shortly after that, my dad took a pastoral job in Innisfil, and that's kind of where we moved and have kind of stayed in that more central Alberta ever since. But um, yeah, for us growing up, it was definitely a lot of summertime fishing and fall time hunting, and the hunting was more of a sustenance necessity as we were a fairly large family, and that's kind of how we sustained ourselves through the winters. But the fishing was always kind of the pleasure side of things, where obviously we did catch and keep some too here and there, but it was a great thing to do as a family. And I started out, I mean, probably until I was, I would say, I don't know, early teens. I had never even seen a fly rod. We just, conventional gear fished, and we kind of had this like place that we could visit out on Pine Lake. So a lot of my growing up fishing memories were on that lake, or our local rivers like the Red Deer River, or some of the smaller creeks around. And we'd spend a lot of our summers just doing that. And then when I got a little bit older, my dad always had a fly rod in the shed that we never really did much with, except we actually, we snared gophers with it. That's kind of how my first thing, I guess I could say I caught on a fly rod, was a gopher. But that's kind of where it started. And then, in my younger teens, we used to camp on a small creek here in Alberta all the time. And I just started it would be more literally dabbling with a fly rod until, I did it a little bit more in my early 20s. And then once my daughter was born, I just kind of dove deep into the fly fishing. And, I think at that point, you couldn't have convinced me to pick up a conventional rod anymore. And the rest has really been history as far as, diving into it personally, and then meeting this incredible group of people that I'm part of now that has, turned this into a career as well, and a true passion for the sport. And I mean, listening to the intro of this podcast, I love it because it's a great description of, what we do in the summers, and getting to hear so many stories and, walk through some of the paths that people are going through in their lives. And I think for us now, we maybe don't do as much personal fishing as we thought we might once do, but we get to fish through people, and that's a whole nother path to see it through, which is a pretty cool one.
So you said when Ren was born, that was kind of when you jumped in kind of head first and went after it. Kind of explain, maybe you don't know, maybe we'll just kind of walk through it here, is like, what do you think that moment of having a child caused you to explore fly fishing at the level you eventually did?
Yeah, it is a real curious question. I know I have thought about it quite a bit, and I'm not sure if I could put my finger directly on it. I think in a way I was trying to maintain my independence in the things that I still like to do. I wasn't going to let having a child kind of like tie me down in a sense. And I think at that time, it was me and a nephew of mine had kind of just always done the things together like that. And the fly fishing just became this thing that was taking us to see new water, because you fish things differently. I got to explore the West Country. Although I'd done it for years with conventional gear, you see it a whole different way. And it became a real passion to just have Ren with us all the time. And that was a really fun thing with her, because as much as I was learning a lot of it, she was just getting to be there as part of it all the time. And as a parent, you want to do things right, and you don't always know what the right thing is. But I just thought of how I was raised, and being constantly outside or constantly in nature, it changes kids a bit. And I think we're losing that a little bit in our world today. And I just think it was an easy thing to do with her. Now, as putting it right onto the fly fishing, I don't know why that was so explorative at that time. It was one of those things I always wanted to do, but never made the time or the money to invest in it. It sometimes can be intimidating, the cost factor and this and that. But I think another part of it was just meeting the right people at the right time. Having having the support of good friends who are also doing it, because it's not really something you just want to do by yourself.
It's an interesting thing as you're talking about it, trying to kind of explore why a new a child, obviously they're new if they're, but like that's kind of a new experience in itself, and there's a lot that goes into the the birth, the growth, and the raising of a child, which can kind of be like the exploration of fly fishing, where both were probably very new to you at the time, and they both came with a lot of frustrating moments.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm trying to get at is there might have been a lot of patience involved or needed for both to be successful. And maybe there was just a big parallel for you in that, having a child and learning to fly fish, and they just rhythmically came together. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's could be a very accurate description of it, because you do, and you also, I think when I get to see a lot of other new fly fishermen start, you see them almost take it too seriously. And how I started, you couldn't really take it all that seriously, especially when you're doing it with a kid, because I know she's not fishing at the start and all that, but you're constantly distracted in the sense that you're taking care of her needs above yours. So you never really could take it that seriously. Sometimes you drive out to a spot, it took you an hour to get there, and there's a meltdown going on, and you just pack your stuff up and drive home, because that is what it is. So you kind of develop a real ease and like peace in it, because that's really what it should be anyways.
But don't you think that gear fishing is probably more successful? We say it to clients all the time, but fly fishing fishing's hard, and then we make it harder by fly fishing. And I just I'm just exploring the irony of, I think sometimes with kids, and people say it often, it's like, well, don't start your kids fly fishing because they're not going to enjoy it. And there was something probably very unique or organic about that exploration together. Some things that I just kind of came up with is trying to parallel raising a child and fly fishing. And I think one thing is, when you have a child, is how quickly you become not the focus, or your ego kind of gets put on the back shelf. And I think oftentimes fly fishing can be very much that, where you can be whoever you want to be. Ultimately, what happens, as our good friend David Spencer says, the script is already written. So talk about those early days a little more, kind of with Ren on the river. And I got to be privy to quite a few of those, but explore for the people what it looked like to take, at what age did she go? And you kind of alluded to a little bit of the they want to go home, so you go home. But I know there was a lot of days that weren't quite like that. Mm-hmm. Just the ease of going home. So
yeah,
kind of explain how that works with a young child and the exploration of fly fishing.
Yeah, it isn't and I've had lots of people reach out and ask for that advice, is how do you do it, or what age can you start? And I said, there's no age that you can or can't start. I think Ren, the very first time I took her out, she was about maybe 5 or 6 months old, and so I had her in a chest pack. And I remember those days. Those were actually easy days, because as long as you had some milk with you, and she wasn't even eating real food at that point, so it was super easy. You just keep them on your chest and you kind of go about your day. And then as that journey changes, as they get older, some days are just a lot of planning, and it isn't as much fishing as it is planning, in the sense that got to have lots of snacks. You got to kind of run things on their timeline. You have to be just conscious and aware of what they need from you in the day. And then also just trying to, at any of those ages, engage them in what you're doing. And I think even once a kid's, a year or year and a half, their mind is so curious. So if you take the time with them and you show them, and for Ren, how I got her so engaged was bugs. to this day, right? She loves bugs. We have to flip rocks. We have to look at them, hold them. And she's not squeamish of holding pretty much anything at this point, because that was always a thing for us, is I could keep her engaged by sitting her down and flipping over some rocks. And little did she know, she was actually learning a lot about what she would be doing in the future as far as, fly selection and things like that. But, some days I found super easy. It felt like cheating. But I would say those days quite often came with other close friends that were there with me. And it's because I think when you have an adventure like this with your child, when you do it with the right people, they're as much of an aid to you as you are to your kid, And you're a prime example of that. Like, I think Ren was about 2.5 the first time we went fishing with her. And it's like having people that keep her engaged too, and understand that, hey, yeah, Dad can go do a few casts. I'll hang out with her for a few minutes if she needs some engagement or whatever. All that makes a journey like this possible, right? If it isn't without that, I think if you're running at it solo, it's tough. And it's also one of those things of having a very understanding partner, because, you always have to discuss, levels of danger and what's safe for your child. Should they be wearing a life jacket at a year old on the side of the river, right? Like, it's you don't have the right answers. You just run off the instincts of as you as a parent, and you're growing and learning too. And it doesn't really, there's no roadmap for it. You just kind of have to go do it.
Yeah.
And I think you get discouraged pretty easy, and some people do. But I actually think it's harder to start your kid older. I think if you start them when they're young, it's something they're so accustomed to that.
Yeah, they don't know any different, really.
They don't know.
It's their thing. It's Ren's thing. You said an important thing a little while ago about Ren and kind of having to slow things down or just focus on things other than the fishing. And you talked about bugs and flipping over rocks. And, I'm just finding, as you communicate this story, just a lot of parallels with what fly fishing does for people, and how, as the title says, fly fishing saves lives. The parallel of having to slow down and flip over rocks probably doesn't happen as a gear fisherman, because that entomology side of things really isn't there. And so as you learn and grow in your fly fishing career or journey, and as raising Ren, I think, it might feel like time's getting real, because we're going to kind of jump into who you were without a fly rod at that time. But just understanding that, where having a child and learning to fly fish, and why fly fishing with a kid is so exciting, because there is so much happening when you're fly fishing with, bugs, hatches, river flow, reading the water, reading the fish, the weather, the elements. And sometimes I'm like, we complicate it, overcomplicate it. And then sometimes I'm like, but we don't. That's just what's so magnificent about all of this stuff going on. And I think through a child, you almost get to see it properly, versus this weird level of rushing down to the river and just chucking a spoon out there and hoping to catch something. Very, very interesting correlation as you kind of shared that. So talk to us now about kind of like, who was Tim at that time without a fly rod in his hand?
Yeah, so at that time in my life, can you hear me? There
you just disappeared for a second.
I was like, I can't hear myself. So at that time in my life, so Ren would have been born when I was like 25-ish, something like that. So I had been working as a primary care paramedic here in Alberta for quite a few years, actually, before she came around. And that was kind of like another segue in that earlier question is, I think when I look back on it now, the timing of when I learned was perfect for what I needed later. And I'll get to that a little bit more, I guess. But, working as a paramedic at that time, it also gave me a lot of freedom of schedule. So I worked 48 hours on and I had 4 days off. So essentially I got to be kind of a stay-at-home dad as well as have a full-time job. And that allowed me to have a lot of time to do the things that I loved, as well as, still support a family and that side that's also important. But yeah, I mean, early on in the career that, you're excited to see everything, do everything, be really good at your job. And those are all great things to strive for. But in the beginning, you're kind of blinded to the effects of your job. You're just excited to be there and to be making money, I guess, and to be doing what, you think you really want to do. And that changes with time for sure.
Dive into that a bit more, because you're kind of not giving it enough credit for that journey. So like you said, you kind of fluffed over like 48 hours on and then 4 days off, and you smiled at the 4 days off and it was like whatever, but kind of walk people through who don't know, that 48 hours in EMS.
Yeah. I mean, most people's jobs, they go to work for 8 hours and they go home at night. And when you work shift work, it's a totally different thing. And it affects kind of every way of your life and area of your life and your body. Like you go under extreme stress for those 48 hours, and, who knows the call volume of what you're going to do as a paramedic in that time, or the things that you have to see or be involved in. And then, that 48 hours is over and somehow you have to just switch who you are when you walk in the door at home. You have to try to leave all that at work. A lot of times the sleep deprivation, like for me, it was one of the biggest struggles was, coming off a long night shift, and like that last night for whatever reason was just brutal. And then Kate high five the wife at the door, she goes to work, and now you're your dad. And so those were some of the hardest things. And honestly, like even going into the fishing side of it, those are the days that you like just pushed and went out to the water because you had to be awake anyways. And if you're out there, it seemed to make it easier. But I mean, you can't understate the accumulation of stress, mental stress, physical stress that kind of job puts on you. And it does come from both the hours that you work and the things you have to deal with in that profession.
So I'm going to keep pulling layers off this onion here, which is good. So, I had a short career in EMS, and so I can speak to it from experience, but it's going to be your experience that we kind of dig deeper in. So let's talk about EMS more than you're giving credit to, and the 48-hour shifts, and talk about, what was your average kind of, let's just go through an average 48-hour shift and what it looked like.
Yeah. So
I think you're fine to talk about it, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So like in a normal 48-hour shift, you come on shift that in the morning. So we always worked like a 7 a.m. following to 2 days later, 7 a.m. You get in, mornings are hopefully going to be time to do truck checks and get all the stuff done. So, you're kind of in good shape going into your first day. And then I actually worked out of Ponoka. So I worked, in a station that had 3 ambulances. So 1 or 2 of them were ALS units, meaning advanced life support. So you had a paramedic and a primary care paramedic, which just meant that you could do more. And then the 3rd ambulance was a peak truck that just did mostly like transfers from hospital to hospital, and that was just like 2 EMTs on that specific ambulance. So we would just trade basically call for 48 hours. So depending on the shift, you'd come in, you're either first up or second up, and you go into your day. And call volume definitely would vary depending on the day of the week that you were working. But most of the time you would be fairly steady through your first day and your first night, hopefully getting sleep when you can. And this schedule, I should preface, is also not a thing anymore. They found that this is not an effective way for people to make critical decisions based off of the maybe lack of sleep or overwork in that kind of 48-hour span. But then, you go into your second day, and it was always a gamble. You just felt like if you could get to the second day, we'll just see what happens. And you get through that one into your last night. And I mean, sometimes you got lucky and you got to sleep through one of the 2 nights, or, maybe you were out all night one of the nights. I mean, I think that for me and my crews, we were very good with each other, and we'd help when we could. And even if they were not first up and they know you'd been out for like 4 or 5 hours in the night, they would step up and let you get some rest, that kind of thing. But there was never any guarantee.
How many hours did you have to work straight to be what they call it? They
put you on what they call fatigue.
Yeah.
And that policy changed throughout my career. I think the most common thing was that you had to work 14 hours. But they always had ways of getting around that. So it would be 14 hours inside a 24-hour period if it was consecutive. But if you had too much of a break between calls, let's say 2 hours or more, it basically reset it. So there were, I mean, I can say this now because I don't work for them, but Alberta Health Services was an interesting beast. We worked as a subcontractor to them with a private company. But AHS always seemed to find a way to kind of screw you over. And I understand from their efficiency point of view, but what they were missing was that, these small towns need their ambulances in the town and to be helping the people in the town. And we were often, shipped off somewhere else on a transfer and then end up spending 6-7 hours in Edmonton or Red Deer or even Calgary.
Yeah.
So you felt like you kind of almost let down your town sometimes because it would be empty a lot. And a lot of people didn't know that, which is probably good that they didn't. But yeah, it was always, it was, and like when we talk about first response and the stress of it, most people immediately, their minds go to all the bad stuff you must have to see and deal with. And there is a lot of that. But a lot of times the harder part of it is, managing sleep deprivation, the BS of the job, which is those things that you feel like you're kind of getting screwed over all the time, and not being taken care of. You're just a number. A lot of those typical things that you hear from big corporation type things. But that was definitely the feeling. Even early on, I noticed that a few years into the job, but it didn't get better with time.
So, talk about. We're gonna go layers deeper. That you're on a 48-hour shift. You're 13 hours and 52 minutes, and then you get a break. You don't quite fatigue. Talk about kind of like, we can say stress. Like, everyone goes through stress, and stress is a subjective thing for everybody at a different level. But there's probably a level of stress where you're probably going around high speeds. And what we saw yesterday is not the best conditions. And that's usually when people are out working, and you might have, had an hour's sleep and you're in the middle of the night, and your tones go off, and just kind of walk people through that moment of trying to wake up from, what is an hour of sleep, but it feels like you've been asleep for 400 hours just because how your body's got to go through that sleep, wake up. The stress levels, which is a cortisol spike, which leaves you in this, but you got to perform now, right? Like, somebody's life depends on you, and kind of just walk through that if get a bit more of a graphic description.
Yeah, it is one of those things that, to this day, I still have these like fevered sweats where I wake up in the middle of the night thinking I'm hearing the tones go off. And it doesn't go away because it caused this, for me, if it was the description you just gave, I woke up in anger. Like, I was so mad. I was like, just let me stay in bed. Whatever. And you kind of try to come out of this fog where you're, okay, quickly throw your clothes on, jump in the ambulance. And you're right. Now you're on the road. You're having to make critical decisions, not only driving, but with patients. You have to immediately be the best, which, there's a lot of people out there that aren't the best anyways, but then it's someone's life, or potentially, at the very least, someone's calling because it's their worst day, right? So you have to go there, not only be a professional, but be making good critical decisions when it comes to patient care. And one thing I will say about, and I can't speak for all the provinces in Canada or the US, but how we were trained was so methodical and linear. So when you would get onto a call, you just went back to your basics of, like I have to do this, then I can do this and this and this. And if it doesn't go this way, then I'll go down this other tree and this will take me here. And it was a way of like really helping in those fatiguing moments. Also having a good partner made a huge difference. You know, we also would switch call for call within the ambulance itself. So if you're up and you're attending and you're just like, you look over your part and you're like, I don't got it. Like, I'm sorry, but this isn't mine right now. Like, I'm not going to perform. You know, you would step up for them or vice versa. But it's one of those things that's hard to explain, because when you come out of a dead sleep that isn't long enough, we all know it. It's like that cat nap you have at 2 PM, and then it's only 20 minutes
and then
long.
Dana jumps in and screams at you.
Yeah, and then Dana scares the crap out of you when he wakes you up. It's a hard thing to like come out of and be good. And I've never worked another job that's like it. I've never been in those scenarios where you have to make critical decisions under complete duress. It's like,
well, even in the best of conditions, like have a great sleep all night, tones go off. It's funny because it's been 25, 24 years since I last actually heard a tone other than yours on the phone. But I once in a while will hear them from, you know, like my tones, not your they were different. And it's just like, it's 25 years later, a quarter of a century. And it's, or is that, a quarter?
yeah,
whatever.
It's a long time.
25 years. A lot goes on. And it's still fascinating how it is this trigger, to which I remember, you know, conversations with you when you were at work and you were, you know, between calls and we were on the phone chatting. Maybe you were, you know, had a little bit of a break and you were tying some flies, and all of a sudden I heard your tones go off, and it was like, and I got that anxiety for you, knowing, you know, what you were having to go do and tired and whatnot. But even the flight or fight that you would have on a normal day, say a normal sleep, and just say, hey, at 8 o'clock tomorrow, you have a call and you could prepare for it. You still are in flight or fight. You're still in this emergency medical services, which is what EMS stands for. And you're having to perform at what you said was probably somebody's worst day.
Yeah.
And so to think about that in this level of, you know, constant stress, 48 hours, which you could be run ragged. And then you have 4 days off, and it's like, you know, you said this, all you wanted to do was go to the river. So, you know, back to the fly fishing side of things, how do you feel that fly fishing saved your life from, you know, an absolute, I mean, there's a lot of bad stories in EMS with addiction, and, you know, we've had a couple people on the show that talk about it.
Yeah.
And, you know, just kind of talk about those days off and what in the fly fishing kind of helped you regulate that.
Yeah. I think there's so much value in fly fishing that goes beyond the river. Like you kind of alluded to there, I would pack so many boxes of materials to work with the hope of an hour off, an hour there, here, there. And I would tie flies at work. And it was like, I come back from a call, or there's nothing that can explain this being like, I just did CPR on somebody and they didn't make it. And now I go back to the hall and I have lunch. Nowhere else in life do you see life and death and you move on like it didn't happen.
Quick.
Right. And so for me, like if I was coming back from a stressful situation or call, it's like I went straight to my room and I'd tie some flies. Like it was absolute therapy. Right. I think a huge parallel on those days off in the beginning of my EMS career was me fishing. Right. And then that kind of moved into, yes, I got to do that with Ren, and I got to do some of that, you know, with you guys, my friends. But then once we really got busy in the guiding side of things, I mean, there was nothing better than taking someone for the best day of their life after being with someone on their worst. And the freedom that those days off actually gave you. And I mean, the fatigue surmounted, like, right? I mean, you're working long hours and then you go to the river for 4 days and guide. But you didn't feel tired in the same way because it was the release that you needed from what you were doing. And, you know, as my career progressed and eventually ended, I went through some major trauma from work. And like the very first time that like I had seen a lot of bad stuff, dealt with especially a lot of kid calls, but until I had a child, I'd never been affected by that. And it is a scary thing as well, because you do change, like you become desensitized to death. You become desensitized to grief. You become desensitized to what the normal person would be very troubled by. But it does stack up. It gets to a point in which you're going to have these moments where it actually changes you. And for me, the first time that happened was with a child. And when I came back off that call, I went off work for 2 months, I think it was. And like, I have a very gracious, understanding wife who knew that the one thing I needed was the river. And I just got to go guide.
So how does she understand that? Is it her seeing this happen as your EMS career is kind of launching, going full steam, and then watching you, because a lot of times people don't find something to, not so much that there's a cure, but a contrast. So a contrast to this flight or fight, and the contrast is this rhythmic fly fishing thing. And a lot of people don't. They turn to drinking, they turn to drugs. There's a lot of, like we said before, a lot of bad outcomes through people burning out in EMS. So what do you think it was that your wife saw?
Well, I mean, I think for her, she also works in the medical field. So there was a level of understanding, although she wasn't in the emergency side of things. I think the best way I could say it would have been when I was done, because she then was open with me about how she had seen me change. And I think she was fighting for some resemblance of me not changing. And if it meant accepting, okay, he's gone a little bit more because he's going to be going and guiding more, or whatever it was, I think that was something she viewed as value. And at the same time, she knew who I came home as when I got back. I'm a better dad. I'm a better husband. I'm a better person of society when I got back from the river. And that wasn't how I came home from work. So there was a major contrast to what she could see. And I mean, I don't even know if she would admit that, but by the end, I think she was very worried about me, because I wasn't the same person I was when I started. 12 years of doing that job changes you. And I think if you're really, really good at it, you're almost like a cold-hearted son of a gun, because that's the only way you can get through it. And if you're an empath, which I know that I am quite a bit, it's a really hard job, because things that shouldn't bother you bother you.
Well, it's to be human is to feel, I think is a very interesting thing. It's almost inhuman, doing that job. I know that now there seems to be a little more support or a little more acknowledgement of that. But definitely it's not a prescription to go fly fishing, which I think, kind of drawing my own conclusions from the two, having experienced them, is there's something about fly fishing, and the value of it is that there's, like we talked about, there's so much going on, but the weirdness is your brain does nothing. Like and I say to clients all the time at the end of the day, I'm like, did you think about anything today? It's like, well, besides staring at the fly or the bobber, nothing. And that's what's hard to explain. And maybe that's what I'm trying to explore through the podcast is, what is the through line? What is, we all have our ideas of it, but what is it in the makeup of fly fishing that is your cure, is your contrast, is your prescription? And, maybe throw your own opinions in there, what you feel it had, that would alleviate a lot of that stuff in the EMS.
Well, I think you're so on the money with it, because you really can't do anything else but find peace. And the river is gonna, and we say it a lot, but we just need to let the river come to them, because it's going to, you can step on the water with your head full of problems in your life, but at the end of the day, you haven't thought about them all day, because you can't. We even have dove into that research of just the the level of hormones that are released in your body when you just stand in the water and hear it. You physically feel the touch and you hear it. So there's so much physiological that even happens and psychological that happens by being in and around water. And it brings you this like it's like absolution of not having to worry about anything else going
like
on.
Of
in your
nothingness.
Life. There's nothing there. And I mean, we get to see that happen with people on the water all the time in the sense that like, yeah, you have great conversation, you have this, that, but when you're in the moment of the actual fishing, I mean, they could get, bit by a black widow. They probably wouldn't know it because they're just, you're in the game. And I think it's an addictive quality of fly fishing is that people hunger for it because it is what brings them peace. And I think in our world, we have so much hustle and bustle and things are always timelined. And this has to be, it's like, but you get to the river and the river owes you nothing. It doesn't care who you are. The fish don't care who you are. They're just there to accept you and give you an experience. And you can decide whether you like that experience or not.
Yeah. Don't you think it's interesting though, when, you can say your job, your EMS was so unpredictable. But I also think fly fishing is so unpredictable. And there's just, so I guess what I'm trying to like figure out is what level of predictability does a person need? Because predictability does, soothe the soul. Maybe there is more predictability in maybe the predictability in fly fishing is that we have no control. And, but it's predictable that what it's going to do for us. Like it's no matter what happens, catch fish, don't catch fish, however that plays out. If you really just like give into the river, like you said, I guess the predictability is that it just works. I mean, I'm just trying to like draw conclusions here we don't know. You go float tomorrow. You have no idea, you have some influence on the day, but you have no idea what is going to happen. And oftentimes we're left just stunned. Like, we talk about all the time, like these eternal optimists who head to the river every day. Like this could be the day that they love high sun. This is it. This is the day. And then it doesn't, and it is what it is. But I think kind of leaning into that, letting go is what is the reciprocal, the healing part is just, and I think in like a job like EMS, you can't let go because you'll fall apart.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's so, it's high stress, it's high cortisol, it's high fight or flight, it's extreme games. And if you let go and give into that unpredictability, like you're done. You're done. Right? Or somebody dies.
Someone dies. Yeah.
It's interesting.
It is a very interesting parallel. I think that, I mean, there's a whole nother piece of this for me personally that comes into it. And like, I mean, we know what each other believe. And I know I have a purpose that's bigger than what it has been in the past. It's this thing where, we get to engage with people. But I also believe that God brought not only fly fishing, but the people that came with it into my life at the right time.
Yeah.
It is what I needed. I was burning out hard. A whole nother side of it is basically at the time in which I got to meet you and Troy and some of the other guys, I just lost my brother to addiction.
Yeah.
He's alive, but I lost him. He was my best friend. He's the one I did everything with, hunted, fished, explored with. And when he was gone, I was searching. I needed community. I didn't have it. I needed a best friend. I didn't have it. Right. And when it's supposed to happen, it's supposed to happen. And
the script's written.
And I mean, the irony of the whole situation, truly, when I think about it, is that the greatest thing that could have happened to me was my career ending. And it did. And it did because of my brother.
Yeah.
And at that time I had a new one.
Yeah. It is. And I read a quote today and I can't remember it, but the premise was something about the best beginnings are the endings. Like when things end, when something ends, maybe that's when something truly begins. And I think so often we're trying to, control everything, relating this back to kind of the EMS thing where we feel like we have to control all aspects of our life or the job in EMS. And if we let go, someone's going to die or we're going to die. And then the opposite, the inverse of that is fly fishing, where it's like you're actually in a safe place to just let go, to let if you can, which I think a lot of people listening are going to be like having aha moments where it's like, that's what's magical about the river is when you truly stop trying to, do what you're doing over here in your job and your life and your relationships and stuff like that. That's where we go in the fly fishing world. And it's just like, we just let it happen, and letting it happen was, guide school, which was, exploration of a couple of creeks around here together. And then just realizing this connection of fly fishing was what allowed us to kind of meet and start hanging out. And, here we are 8 years later, 6, 7, 8, 2018 to 5, so it'll be almost 8 years in the spring. But that's just fascinating how, right in there is a correlation between community, finding your group. Now, I know there's a lot of people who are basket weavers and they're artists and they have a lot of different activities that bring them their communities. I think fly fishing is so special. I tell people that when I started this podcast, which was 5-6 years ago, AI wasn't even a thing. And now thinking about it here, it's basically taken over the world. And yet I just can't figure out how it would take over fly fishing, given it's just like going to be the last pure thing left in the planet. Like, really, it can make you better rods, but I mean, like, what can it do to catch more fish? You just tie better flies. I don't know if you don't know which fly to put on. If you can't change that world, and it's probably why it's so sacred and spiritual, is just that it's like this, the pureness of it, which we get to experience all the time, and we get to bring people to experience. I'm just kind of rambling about it, but I'm just walking down this path of like, why is fly fishing so special? And, for you, it was a huge, bringing you out of that space of who knows where you were going. We could see it in your face and your eyes when you would show up and you were in zombie mode, and, like you were just existing, like you weren't living. You were just working to get money and then guiding and just going back and forth. And that, the parallel of the two, the somewhat equal balance, was like allowing you to just survive. Yeah. Right. So.
I think you come out of the other side of it and I know people do find the saying cheesy, that it's how could fly fishing save your life? But maybe they've never needed saving yet. When they do, maybe that's when they find it. Because when you have found it, and when we say fly fishing, it doesn't just mean your time on the water, but it is the community, the people, the experience, and the places you are.
Yeah, it's a very good point.
I've shed more tears on the river than I have anywhere else, and a lot of them weren't even my story to tell. They were someone else's that bring you to that point, and it's incredible. Like, that doesn't happen other places.
Well, and it's like in the intro, and the premise of all of this is, I remember in like 2011, 2012, I had this weird idea that I just want to go walk to rivers and interview random people and just be like, why do you fly fish? And that's just been like on my heart for so long, because I know, when I found it, it was like you. It's just this weird time that all of a sudden, I don't know whether it finds you or you find it.
Touche, yeah.
But it was like, how did I not know about this in such depth before? and because I wasn't ready for it. But I was just curious, like, why do you fly fish? And so I would go to these random spots and say to people, like, why do you fly fish? Can I video you? Which most people weren't really down for that at the time. And social media didn't really fully exist, but it was just always something that sat heavy with me. And so for you, when you hear the phrase fly fishing saves lives, what exactly does it mean to you?
I think it's describing exactly what it is. I think for me, it pulled me out of a time where I saw no end. I went through extreme levels of PTSD where I didn't know physically what I was going to look like in a year. Was I going to be here in a year? I didn't know what it looked like. And for me, that was the time in which I got to find peace somewhere else. And it drew me out of a dark place. And there's no other real thing that can explain that feeling as just pure freedom. And when your mind allows you to move past things and you feel that peace and it starts in one place, that's where it started for me. You know, it's like it doesn't happen overnight. It's not just going away, but it's like that level of peace that comes from the river just chips away. And it chips away at layers until, you know, the layers don't need to be there anymore. You don't have to put up a guard. You don't have to do this. You can exist at a level that, funny enough, you didn't know you could live at.
Yeah.
You were in this box of feelings, or you were in this box of conformity to what you were supposed to be doing, that you don't realize how free life can feel when you're out the other side of a tough situation. And that tough situation doesn't just have to be mine. It can be anybody's in any way. But that's what it means to me. I mean, it gave me my best friends. It gave me the best job I've ever had. It's given me a community like no other. I mean, there has never been a downside for me.
If someone's listening and they feel heavy right now, what would you tell them?
I would tell them, well, it's easy answer is go to the river. But more than that is that no matter how dark your days are, and I could probably compete with you, there is light on the other side. And whether you find that from the spirituality of the river, the spirituality of God, or whatever you believe in, you have to know that there are people there that you can reach out to. And I know I can say this for Dana or myself. If you're listening to this and you're truly struggling, or this strikes a chord with you, talk to us. Like, you have to reach out to somebody, because I promise you that I tried the going it alone thing. It doesn't work. You're never going to get yourself out of those dark days or those dark times or the struggles you're in if you can't talk about it with somebody.
And not alone.
You can't do it alone. I don't know who you can talk to about it, but you have to be honest with yourself so that you can be honest with someone else about how you're feeling. There's nothing that's too dark to get through. You just got to have the right tools to get through it. And a 9-foot rod doesn't hurt.
Huh. Interesting how fly fishing is such a like a sacred solo sport in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't really
but
jam
yet,
with that. But
it's such a community, and I think a lot of the old, you know, I understand it, I respect it. I think to me it's like, you know, I've gone out by myself quite a few times, and you have as well, in the middle of a river with no service, trying to FaceTime me.
Someone has to see what I got.
It's not working. But it's interesting how, you know, that experience of fly fishing and the soloness might be what someone needs. But I find that what's most powerful about fly fishing is the community, that listen to the podcast, is the community that watch our, you know, Thursday Night Live fly tying, is the community of people who we get to take on our boats every single year.
Yeah.
And it's not lost on me for a second that, you know, we've had the privilege of giving that, you know, fly fishing experience to so many people, and they've opened up in our boat and shared about it, and how it's just, it's having profound change on their life. And that's it. That's fly fishing. If you're randomly listening to this podcast and you've never been fly fishing, there's places in your local areas that, are communities that you can reach out. I'd be shocked if you were this far into a Fly Fishing Saves Lives podcast and you've not fly fished. But it's a very sacred thing. What keeps you coming back to the river year after year?
Well, I think that has that changes year to year. I think when you're newer into fly fishing, there is a level of excitement about what you can catch, and that doesn't go away. But I mean, I don't feel like I need to go out there and catch 40 fish every day. For me, the level at which I really enjoy the river is at a very slow pace with the right people. And by slow pace, I mean is being willing to look around, maybe focus a little bit on what's really happening with a hatch, maybe watching fish eat that you don't even cast to. Learning the minutia of a river as a guide is very important. And so we do spend a lot of time on the river, even if we're not guiding, and it's because we have to know it better. And for me, I feel like this is one of those, if you could call it a sport, I don't like that word, but it's something we do that you're never going to be the best at.
Or you can never win.
You can never win. And you could make the perfect cast with the perfect fly, and you can have a trout with a pea-sized brain still refuse your fly. And I think it's actually a really cool thing, because we've talked about it a lot, where if you went out there and you caught 100 fish every day, you probably would move on and find something else because this loses its allure.
I had a client 2 years ago, Doug, if you're listening. He said, it was a great 4 days of fishing, and the river just gave that group a lot. And he had said at one point there's a fine line of not enough fish and too many fish. And I'd never heard a client say too many fish before.
Yeah.
And I thought about it like you're saying, is that if you knew that you were going to catch 30 fish tomorrow and the next day, and this is how it was going to go down, I think it would just be like you wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Right? It's gambling. It's literally fills the addictive highs of gambling and putting $100 on black and being like, what's going to happen? Now you can have all the theories and the mathematical formulas and whatnot, and it hits red or green, and it's just like, oh, the lows of the lows, and then you double it up and you hit black and you win again, and it's like you're back in. And that's fly fishing. That it's just but there's always hope, right? Every cast is hope, and it's just keeps you, think about hope and think about like a trip. You don't have a trip planned. The best part of a trip is before it, like the hope you're going somewhere. Christmas Day, which we're doing this on December 18th, is soon. And for kids, it's the hope, it's the excitement of that. What's in the box? They don't know, and can be disappointing for sure. But that's every single cast. And it's funny because we sometimes know that we shouldn't probably go, but we do because, like I said earlier, we have this hope of this will be the day. And it's just to fill your life with hope, which is what every day of fly fishing is pretty magical, because, our world can be a little different here and there. And it doesn't always seem like there's hope in abundance. And, a simple river and a fly rod, we could talk for 400 years about gear and whatnot, but the idea is, a fly rod, a line, and a couple flies, and a river and a buddy. And that's your cure. There's your prescription. Dr. Lattery has written it for you.
RX is all you need.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think that when you find those magical days, and not every day will feel like magic out there, you'll find joy in every one. But when you have those days, for me, like I think back to last year fishing with you and my dad, like that day will live in my memory bank for life.
You gonna set the hook? Or?
Yeah. Yeah, set the hook like you're committed to the Lord.
He wasn't like setting the hook.
And I think for me, it's been a very cool thing too, is like, Dad used to do when he was young. Then he stopped because he raised his kids and he was busy gear fishing and doing this and that and
Reproducing
pasturing and reproducing, lots of reproducing. But then like getting to then now re-share my passion, which was his passion, back with him, and having moments like that have
the full circle.
Full circle, like so special. When you see the joy. And I think that is a bit of an addicting quality as a guide, is seeing the joy that it brings other people.
Huge. Like when, to answer the question of what keeps, bringing me back every year, it's just, I get so, it's so weird because it is a catch-22 because it can be frustrating.
Yeah.
But it's just so magical to watch people have the time of their best day. Like you said, their absolute best day, and that joy that it brings me. Probably one of my favorite qualities in a client is when we talked about hope. Yeah. When every corner, no matter how bad or good the fishing is, it's like, here we go. And in my head, I'm like, it's not happening. But that is fun, right? And I feed off that, and it's like the hope. This one, here it is. But the thing is one guy said to me, is like, if I don't live like that or fish like that, then I might as well just quit. Because when you do have that hope, you go 150% into every single cast. And if you're not going to do it, then just go home, right? Like just negate it. And such parallels to a lot of things in life where, if you think you can't, you can't. Not to be cliche, but that's literally what that is.
Yeah. I had a guide in. I was being guided this one trip down to Argentina, and I had a guide say to me, there was somebody on the trip that was struggling to catch fish, but they spent the whole time frustrated and angry. And then he said to me, the energy that you put down your rod, the hope you have, whatever you're carrying with you, that, like you said, that next cast could be the fish. That's what brings the fish 100%. To you. And it's so true, and we see it. You see when people get down on themselves, they're just like wah, wah. And then the other guy's like, no, I'm gonna stick with it,
and they're just killing it.
They kill it.
It is. I can't explain it.
We joke about the fish gods, but it's just, there is something to it.
Maybe that's why fly fishing exists, or maybe that's why the river exists, or the fish exist, is to just and we. It doesn't make sense scientifically and whatever, but maybe we just run with it. And there's a spiritual energy of your 9-foot rod and your 100-foot fly line, and kind of how that all goes down. It's very, we see it a lot.
A lot. Oh, I agree.
Okay. Last question. And then we'll sign off here. So this last question goes like this. What has fly fishing given you that you hope you never lose?
Oh, man. There's a few things. I think for me, it actually isn't even a hard thing to answer. It's my people.
Yeah. That was my answer.
I can't, when I think about, like, the scary thing about fishing for me is if you just picked up and removed fishing from my life, where would I be without my people?
Mm-hmm.
And that's come in a lot of forms, but the bonds that have been created around it with a very large community. But I would say the most important thing is just my tight community that is, because what you don't realize is it's only quality people. It's the people that actually feed your soul, even when the river is frozen over. It's a different level that I've never experienced in other relationships in my previous life. And I think that's a pretty special thing.
It's a deepness, even, with our group that we guide with, our group through Thursday Night Live, the TNL fam. It just all comes down to what we call OQP, the only quality people standard. And it's true. It's like, the people that I've met, in the last like 15, 16 years of my life, it's like, I that's what I hope I never lose. If they took the river away and somehow us group of weirdos could find something else to do, which I don't know how that's possible, but yeah, it's the people. It's always about the people.
It's always been the people. Yeah. And that's why you love people and catch fish.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, this has been a couple years in the making, but hopefully there's more people that want to share their stories. So if you're listening to this podcast for the first time, I think you can comment now. That's how much podcasts have changed in probably Spotify or wherever you're hearing this. But let us know. Yeah, you're new to the podcast. If you have a story, how somehow fly fishing saved your life, how stepping into the river has made you a better person. I'd love to share your story and chat with you. So there's many ways to reach out. I believe somehow you can reach out through the podcast, or you can look at Instagram and look for me, or flyfishingbowover.com and send an email through there. Lots of ways, easy to connect with people nowadays. So like Tim said earlier, you're probably not going to get through this alone. If you need to talk, if you want to share your story, then please reach out. And I would love to have you on your episode of Fly Fishing Saves Lives.